up?
Hey, how are you, Joe? Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. How about yourself?
Excellent. Very good. Where are you located?
Lincoln, Nebraska.
Lincoln, Nebraska. We're kind of in the same neighborhood. I'm in Kansas City, Missouri.
Well, absolutely. And I moved here from Overland Park. So,
Oh, okay. All right, cool. My radio show I have, my engineer is from Lincoln. His
okay.
name's John Christopher. He worked for Entercom for a while. Anyway, so yeah, so he tells me a lot of stories about growing up and being a farm boy up there. So I feel like I know the area well.
Well, that's fantastic. Yeah, I kind of did an around the world. I was born in Lincoln. I moved in '89 to Overland Park, graduated from Shawnee Mission West. And then I kind of traveled around, lived in Los Angeles for a while, worked in entertainment, back in Kansas City, and then came here just last year.
Okay,
So,
wow, that is quite a whirlwind. And we'll peel back all those layers. So first and foremost, thank you for taking a minute out. I want to begin our conversation with living through the last 3.5 years, getting through a pandemic, and how did it change you and how did you get through it?
uh, well, you know, it changed me in really the way that I interact with others. It made me value in-person interaction a lot more, I think. And um, one of the more interesting things I think is that it segmented a lot of my friends in ways that I didn't expect. Some people have completely become removed. They've just taken themselves out of doing any social activities. Oh, can we meet? Can we do a Zoom call instead? I'm like, well, we used to get together,
Yeah.
and it's very strange. And some, uh, accepted the pandemic and basically where we are today differently than others did, in terms of where their life is now. Some have just adhered to, I'm just cutting myself off. I'm going to order in. I'm going to, we're not going to go out and do anything anymore. And that's just kind of strange to me because I guess I'm a social animal. I have to get out and interact with people.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing that we learn through this is that community and human interaction is so key. Yeah, we were connected with all these devices, but if you can't have that personal connection, what are we doing?
Yeah, exactly. I
You know?
100% agree. Yeah, it's really wild.
Yeah.
Did you find kind of the similar instance with your friends?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of Zooms during that time and a lot of separation. But I have kids and we would drive and we would get out and about and see things. And and I did a lot more interviews with the jazz world, which was really good. And that's obviously remote, but to have that connection to talk to people so you didn't because there was a lot of loneliness and a lot of
Mhm.
musicians for like that first couple weeks, it was probably cute living in Brooklyn that you could play your instrument in your apartment. But after a
Yeah.
while, people's banging on the, come on, stop blowing the horn. So those
Yeah.
kinds of things, it was good to have that interaction so that people felt connected because the social calendar just evaporated. They couldn't do anything. So if
Yeah.
they could at least talk about it, it was a good thing. But yeah, once the live shows and everything opened up, we relished it. It was wonderful. So I'm a big fan. I'm a very social creature. So getting out and mingling is a huge priority for me.
Exactly. I'm the same way. So it was tough. It was very tough for me. And so I did a lot of hosting in during that time period as well, where those who actually were okay seeing others, I would just say, hey, if you 5 people want to come over and I'm going to make dinner, just
Yeah.
to try to keep things going.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get to the heart and soul. I know there's a lot that goes into you being a writer, and there's a lot that is a part of you being an inspiration. But if I had to boil this down and put you in front of a bunch of third graders, it's career day. One of the kids looks up and says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer that child?
I help addicts find their unique flavor of confidence to obtain and maintain their sobriety.
Okay. All right. So what did you want to be in the third grade? What was your dream?
I wanted to be a doctor.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're doing that now by helping people, correct? I mean, isn't that
I
kind of
I guess, yeah, in a sense, I kind of went full circle in my life. I had not thought about that until this exact moment. That's an interesting point. Yeah, I am a doctor in a sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's go back to your beginnings, where you were born and raised, and how all of these seeds became who you are to write and to help people get to a better place. How did all of this evolve into who you are today?
Well, that's a bit of a complicated, probably 2 life story there. But Yeah, I was born in Lincoln, Nebraska, and by all accounts had a pretty, normal upbringing in the early 80s. Um, back when you still ran to grab the telephone in the kitchen because it was the only one you had, right? So social interaction was always was great because it was outside doing things with others. My dad worked in advertising, and so I got exposed to a lot of pretty cool things growing up, and from newspaper and celebrities and radio talk shows and everything. So I got a really unique upbringing. He brought me along like I was his apprentice, so that was pretty cool. We moved a little bit growing up, so went to Ohio when I was in middle school, and then back to Lincoln, and then to Overland Park, Kansas, where I graduated high school with honors. I went to K State. I majored in chemical engineering pre-med, but I didn't finish because, well, a couple things were going on. I was struggling with bipolar, and I started self-medicating. This was kind of the beginning of my addiction challenge in life, and I worked for a company that ultimately developed some pretty cool stuff at the beginning of the internet. And then I left there and started my own company. And then I was a serial entrepreneur going through multiple industries. Landed in California in the entertainment business for about 7 years in the early aughts. And then back to Kansas City, where I got married and had a printing company, which takes me up until about 2013 or so. And my addiction along the way became a true challenge. At this point, I was drinking about a handle of Jack Daniels a day, and functioning by all accounts, but it was a challenge. My business partner suddenly died. I got divorced. I ultimately lost my house, and I was living on the streets of Kansas City in 2015. So I'll pause for a moment and I'll let you ask anything up to that point.
Wow, 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 wow. So you've been around. So when you look back on all of this that happened, what was the flashpoint? What was the moment where you were like, this is going to be, I'm going to use what I've lived to help others get through this?
That flashpoint actually happened earlier this year. So shortly before I ended up on the street, I met Samantha Thomas randomly on the beach in Destin, Florida. I had taken a group of friends down to Destin in March of 2014, and we just had an instantaneous connection. I mean, this was my, and as I, you know, fell into the homelessness, she was there along the way. We were separated by distance, and I didn't have a phone a lot of the time, so we communicated by letter. We were like pen pals, where she was my physician. She was like my psychiatrist by mail, and she would write and she'd ask me questions about, like, what are you thinking, what are you doing, and really challenging me to think about why I was still drinking. So here I was on the street and struggling to survive, but the most important thing to me was, where was that next drink coming from? And so for the next 16 months, I'm on the streets of Kansas City, and that is a cold environment, at least on the ends of the year, as you know, being
Yeah,
someone from Kansas City.
yeah,
But I found a way to make it work. I I figured out my root cause while I was in rehab, which was abandonment, which comes back to childhood. And there, my mother and my father separated before I was born, and then ultimately I was adopted when I was 8 by my dad, who I spoke about earlier. And my father didn't show up, and my mom said some things in the courtroom which made me feel like nobody really wanted me except my dad. And so that was a real kind of struggle. And I was able to tie all of my challenges and all of my everything I was running from, I could tie to that one moment. And once I figured that out, man, it was really easy to stand up sober. And so that was March 23rd of 2016.
okay. So let me ask you this: who's been a hero for you? You've obviously come a long way. You've had to find inspiration. Who's that hero been for you?
In real in Well, I mean, the person I look up to the most in my daily life is probably my dad. He was someone who always kind of challenged and put me in the right direction. But Samantha had the largest impact on me lifelong. I mean, like that. I mean, she changed my life.
So if you could meet anybody alive on the planet right now that you find inspirational and you could spend some time with them, who would it be?
Elon Musk.
What
Yeah.
would be the first thing you would ask him?
I would ask him how he separates his day in terms of being able to manage so much. I find that very intriguing. As an entrepreneur, I find it very interesting how he switches gears. Now I have a little insight because I just read his biography on how he does this, and it's very interesting. It's similar to what I have done in my own life, which is basically go very focused for a set number of hours into one topic and then switch. Otherwise, you basically get nothing accomplished.
Yeah.
But it's really he's really just an inspiring figure of how much he gets done in a day. And of course, he has a lot of money to have a lot of assistance in that. But it's still pretty remarkable.
Yeah, it absolutely is. What's been the best advice you've ever gotten?
The best advice I've ever gotten. I think this would be from one of my early mentors, Jeff Judah. And he told me that I should stop looking at the world so casually and look at the complexities of how it all ties together. That one little thing that is happening somewhere else in the world could actually impact an industry someplace else, and to look at those interleaving complexities and to get a better understanding of the world. And I took that to heart. I was 18 at the time, and man, it's had a huge impact on my life.
So what is the motivation for you every day to wake up, to help others, to maintain who you are, to do all of this holistically? What is that for you?
Well, that's a motivation of legacy at this point. So Samantha was tragically murdered on August 1st of 2020 by a drunk driver. And that ultimately tremendously changed my life and my thinking on this, because she was already encouraging me to write a book, and that put it into gear. She wanted me to share what I was doing to stay sober with everybody, and that's where it really laid, down that groundwork. And ultimately, when I testified in sentencing at her trial earlier this year in April, coming back from that, I was just outside of Nashville driving, and it just hit me like a bolt of lightning, is the only thing I can tell you. And it's just, you know what? This is what I'm going to do. This is
Yeah.
what I'm inspired to hold this legacy. She put so much faith and confidence in me to see me through to where I am today. And it's the right thing to do to carry that legacy forward.
So as a writer, what was the book early on in your life that you read that either made you want to write one day or gave you that love of reading?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. Um, huh. One of my favorite, this is a really wild favorite book that I had, but I really liked Fahrenheit 451.
Yeah, it's a great
Yeah.
book.
And I first read that when I was in like sixth grade, which was be very early for someone to read a
Yeah,
book that complex.
yeah,
Um, but boy, there was something very it got you thinking about a lot of different things. And I really Ray Bradbury, has a very interesting way of weaving kind of reality in with what possibly could be.
yeah,
The science fiction, the way he wrote it was very unique.
yeah. So what's been one of your best success stories so far with helping people in their addictions and to help them get to a better place?
I think that the one that really caught me off guard is one that I'm going to chalk up as the best, because it made me look at something entirely different. So I got a letter from a reader in Germany shortly after my book was released. It was a couple months later, and this this reader told me that my book had helped them break their device addiction,
Wow.
and I had never in all of course, I'm a substance abuse challenged person, so I had never thought about utilizing this method to help people with device addiction, which is a true struggle. And that laid down some good inspiration for me to turn and say, wow, you know what, I could help others with device addiction. This is something that is, like, I hear people talk about it, but I never really thought. So I ended up writing a talk specifically for this. And in my second book, Sober Method, I actually dig into it a little bit. And I'm going to write a third book, but it might be about 2 years because I'm working with device addiction right now to try to figure out what will work the best and how I can structure that into a program that can really help. Because it's really more of a balance,
Yeah.
we're not going to get rid of that device. You still have to use it to work. I mean, it's a part of our life, but you have to get rid of it as an appendage. And so that's going to be a complex thing. But I'm really that's inspired me right at the moment.
So you've obviously lived a lot of life. You've overcome a lot. You've seen a lot of things. So let's say you have a dream tonight. You run into the 20-year-old version of you, and you could give that young version of you a piece of advice based on the wisdom that you've gained up to this point. What advice would you dispense on that young version of you?
Have more confidence in myself. Don't be afraid of what other people think. I would want to live pretty much the exact same life that I've lived because it has taught me so much and given me unique experiences. But I would wish to do it with more confidence, to be able to walk into that room and not be afraid what everybody was thinking about me, and to just be good with myself. And I think if most people can get to that point, they'd have a lot better life.
So you've lived in a lot of different places in your life. What was your favorite place? Is it Lincoln or was it another place?
It's definitely Lincoln. I'm
Yeah.
home. I mean, and I'm not like totally home. Let's just say Nebraska, because I still aspire to move out to the Sandhills and Ranch of all things. And that may sound like a crazy dream, but that's my next stop in life.
Right on. So what are you the proudest of everything you've done and overcome and become in your life? What are you the proudest of?
I don't think I've reached that point yet. But to this point, I think I'm the proudest of putting this whole program together. I mean, it's taken a lot out of me, and writing a book is hard. I mean, it is not easy.
Yeah.
I was like, this will be easy. I can write, no big deal. It's tough. And writing also challenged me to really look at myself and understand even my own, escape out of the throes of addiction even further than I had already. And so I'm very proud of that. But I think that from a legacy standpoint, what I really hope to do is that, 10 years from now, when somebody talks about how they got sober, I hope that the sober method and I think it will be part of that conversation. So it's not just AA. We're looking at things that really look at incremental change rather than fundamental instantaneous change.
So everyone out there has a perception of you, family, friends, your readers, clients, colleagues, everybody, but you ultimately run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I would describe myself as somebody who is very driven and with a warm heart. And that's and I'll tell you the thing that strikes me very interesting is that is pretty much what I hear from people when they tell me what they think of me. Is that somebody last week told me that I reminded them of Keanu Reeves. Is that I was very quietly doing good work without asking for the spotlight.
Yeah. So if anyone out there wants to get involved with your writing, reach out to you, learn more about you, anything about your world, how can they do that?
Go to my website, MassimoRigotti.com is the best way to get me. All of my contact is there. I interact with everybody that reaches out, especially if it's on X. That's the easiest way to get me. I also have a channel, Sober Method, on TikTok that recently launched, where I give tips and tricks every day of the week on that sober journey. And hopefully that grows more and it has some good value.
Excellent. Massimo, this has been wonderful. Thank you for your story. Thank you for what you're doing. Best of luck with everything. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, sir. Take care.